A special issue of the journal. NORMA, International Journal for Masculinity Studies, argues that environmental damage is linked not simply to humanity as a whole, but more specifically to patterns of behavior associated with dominant forms of masculinity. The publication brought together research from 22 scientists across 13 countries and explored how gender-related social norms may influence climate change and environmental destruction. The issue was published under the title, Men, Masculinities, and a Planet in the Closing Days of the M-Anthropocene. Researchers intentionally used the term M-Anthropocene to emphasize that the current ecological crisis is connected primarily with the actions of powerful men from wealthy countries in the global north. In sociology and economics, this term refers to highly industrialized and politically influential nations, such as the United States, Canada, Western European countries, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. The studies covered a wide range of topics. Researchers examined climate denial connected to pipeline politics in Canada, the environmental influence of China in the Pacific region, meat-centered blogging culture in Finland, and environmental activism in Africa, Latin America, and the United Kingdom. Across these studies, the researchers identified several recurring patterns. On average, men were found to have a larger carbon footprint than women. This difference was associated mainly with transportation, travel, and tourism. Men were also less likely to express concern about climate change and less willing to change daily habits in response to environmental problems. The research further suggested that men are less likely to support political parties focused on environmental justice. In addition, many industries with high environmental impact continue to be dominated by men. These include fossil fuel extraction, heavy industry, industrial agriculture, and military structures, all of which contribute significantly to carbon emissions and ecological damage. The researchers also noted that climate change denial among some right-wing groups is often linked with misogynistic attitudes. According to the authors, these patterns reflect broader cultural values rather than purely individual choices. Professor Jeff Hearn from the University of Huddersfield, one of the editors of the issue, stated that there is already substantial research connecting certain forms of male behavior with environmental harm. However, he argued that this aspect is still rarely discussed in political debates about climate policy. At the same time, the authors emphasized an important distinction. They do not argue that biological sex itself is responsible for the environmental crisis. Instead, they focus on the idea of hegemonic masculinity. This term describes a dominant social model of masculinity associated with power, control, competition, consumption, and resistance to vulnerability. According to the researchers, these cultural norms can encourage behaviors linked to excessive resource use and environmental exploitation. The publication also stresses that many men are already working against these trends. Environmental activism, sustainable lifestyles, and climate advocacy increasingly include male participants who challenge traditional ideas about masculinity. The overall conclusion of the research is that environmental problems cannot be understood only through economics or technology. Social values and cultural expectations also shape how societies consume resources and respond to climate change. In simple terms, the study argues that the climate crisis is connected not just to industrial systems, but also to the social ideals that influence human behavior.